will never get new features. We have some interesting new stuff coming up in a couple of weeks. Again, going on and on, you will not get any of those updates. The other track is called continuous. The continuous track allows you to get the feature updates, also turn on services, cloud services, if you want to actually be able to connect to the different devices you're using.
Or connect it with 365.
And connect it up to 365.
Yeah.
And last but not least, Apple has announced that they are going to discontinue This is you, James.
Yeah.
You talk about the login. Oh, excuse me. Anybody have any questions? Feel free to raise your hand. Alex, if there's questions that come in online, please stop and ask us. There's a mic right here in the middle of the room, which will make it a little easier for the folks online.
Yep. Or we'll repeat them. Yeah, absolutely. So this is going to be hard to see if you're not online, because it's kind of small. We have in the you want to own that password. You want to control access to the tools and services that we have and make sure that the user can't go and change their password or do anything along those lines. You want it to be consistent. So the federated ID with single sign-on, that almost everybody here just raised their hand.
And I'm sure it's the same for you folks online.
Yeah, and there was a great question earlier about if we are using the Microsoft identity and signing in, do we then not have to sign into Adobe? And the answer right now is yes, you still have to sign in once to Adobe. So when they launch Acrobat or they log into Creative Cloud with the Creative Cloud desktop app, they're going to sign in, but that authentication will remain on the machine and will stay there for a long time. So they won't have to be signing in every time they boot up, which is good. Unless they're in a lab and they're moving around, right? So if they are moving around, they will obviously sign in, sign out every time. So I've kind of reduced a lot of this table down to really two takeaways. The Adobe ID is owned by the individual. You really don't have a lot of control, particularly in education. The old model where you would give them a key, you'd end up in the situation where the students all like flipping out because they don't have access to software because they didn't bother to go and buy another year, right? If you go to the enterprise model with enterprise or federated ID, then you can control the license distribution in the admin console and ensure that students and faculty, if you're on education, don't lose access to tools and services during the course of of the term, right? That's really important. And on the commercial side, it makes it really easy for you to do things like track the license deployment and to ensure that when somebody leaves, you can recover that license and give it to the new employee who's going to replace them, which is pretty awesome.
James, the other thing I wanted to mention is not only just about the login and doing that, there's the assets themselves.
That's a great point.
Can you talk about that really quickly?
Yeah, so in the Adobe ID world, anything that's created by the user is actually owned by the user. So if in the commercial side, they leave the company and they're taking all of your IP with them if they happen to store it in Adobe's Document Cloud or if they put it into Creative Cloud. If it's on the enterprise side, you own the assets. So you can immediately shut off access to those assets when the person leaves the organization. And that's enormous for commercial. So you have tight control over that IP. We introduced very recently content tracking in the admin console. So all of the activities related to content, Bill Johnson added an asset into Creative Cloud, and then he shared it with Jane, and these are the kinds of things that you can see in a log, and that allows you, if you have to go and do an audit at some point, then you can go back and look at that activity and say, oh yeah, Bill, he shared it where he shouldn't have gone. Another thing that's important related to assets and sharing is that in the enterprise side, so enterprise and federated, you can control whether or not assets can be fenced inside the organization or allowed to be shared outside the organization. So you can say, I don't want anybody to share outside the org. The only time you can collaborate is with somebody in your trusted domains. And you can extend the trusted domain pool for collaboration as well. So if you know that you're working with an agency and you need to deal with people in that agency, great. You can activate that for a while and turn it off when that relationship ends. So you've got quite a bit of control in terms of assets.
So the one last thing I just wanted to mention on that is if you are using the Adobe ID today and you want to move to one of these, we actually have migration tools now as well.
We sure do.
And basically, it's an easy way to migrate these users and migrate the assets out of the user's account, if you will, and into your
Right.
enterprise organizational account. So we just try to make it easier. You not only keep track of what's going on in applications, pull them in if you need to.
Yeah, so if you're using Adobe IDs today, we strongly encourage you to chase those down and convert them to, at a minimum, enterprise IDs if you want the user to be able to control the password, like in your case. But
well, if they're all using, from this audience being using Office 365 SSO.
yeah, then it wouldn't be the case. I know we have some EDU where they're doing that now with Adobe ID. So get them all converted at a minimum to enterprise, but obviously the real direction would be to go to SSO.
So before we change gears entirely, Alex, were there any questions online that James or myself didn't answer that in these two topics? Okay.
All right, solid.
Anybody in the room? Any questions before we move on? Can we ask you, or we can repeat the question? Go ahead.
Okay, so for the federated and single sign-on, sorry, for that identity type, right now we're using identity provider to do that federation.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go to log in, the person has to go to Adobe to initiate the login. Is there going to be some type of a move so that they can start initiating the login from the identity provider instead?
Yeah, I'm going to repeat that. So the question is, currently a user is going to log in. They want to log into Creative Cloud. They get redirected to the identity provider who's going to put up their screen, their forms, and so on, and then that passes back to Adobe. Is there a way to go the other way so that if, and I'm now putting words in your mouth, if I had, say, an Okta storefront with a whole bunch of apps on it, and one of them was Creative Cloud, I could just click on that and it would automatically log me into Creative. Is that kind of where you're going?
Correct.
Yeah. We don't offer that today. That is high on our list of things to do, which would be IDP-initiated login for those outside in here. That's what you're asking for. So we want the IDP to be able, the identity provider, to be able to pass in that request to authenticate to us, and then that would finish the process. That's, again, high on our list to do. It keeps getting pushed off due to other priorities, and I think you'll like what we're going to tell you about in a little while more than that. So, but once we're done with the thing we're going to tell you about, maybe we'll have some time to spend on that other piece.
Other questions?
Yep.
All right. So let's switch gears and talk about Okay.
Yeah.
Woo! Woo! I put the wrong button. It's kind of an interesting function in Acrobat. What Organize lets you do is say, like, I've got these 7 files, I want to bring them together to build a package, but then I want to play around. I want this one first and this one second. I actually met with a client this morning who's just trying to do this, trying to build a package to deliver for an audit, and they want it in a certain order, in a certain way, and that's what Organize brings to the table. But again, it's right here in Outlook, in OneDrive or in SharePoint. Additionally, within the Acrobat product itself, we have the services, there's different storage locations. I'm sorry, I'm going to screenshot of that, but you can actually add OneDrive, SharePoint, let's not talk Microsoft for a second, Google Drive, and other things that you can have that as your storage for your content. And from right within Acrobat, you just say, open it, put it back, edit it, do this sort of things. And so I just want to make sure everybody was aware that this is out there. And does anybody have questions about how this works? Because I think I just want to make sure, either online, Alex, or here in person, anybody. Yes, go ahead.
I have a clarification question. So you're saying push out on desktops, but this is an Office 365 add-in, so I'm actually doing it through the admin portal, and it just shows up in Mac or web.
Yeah, you can do that too, yeah.
Yes, it is. It's just a plugin.
Yep.
And Jonathan, if you want to come to the microphone, I don't know if you have any more little details. This is our product manager for this, Jonathan.
Hey.
You want to just talk to him for a second, maybe a little more depth than I just did?
Yeah, sure. So we've got 2 distinct integrations that give users a great Acrobat experience across Office 365. One, we have a Office add-in deployed centrally through the admin console, which lights up Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Mac, desktop, web. This second experience here is a slightly different plugin, which goes into OneDrive and SharePoint and takes control over the PDF MIME type effectively. So much like today with Word, Excel, PowerPoint files, it opens in Word, Excel, PowerPoint online, we offer you a Document Cloud online experience. So you can directly go through and you have these actions, but you can also, if you were to click on a PDF, you get a web-based version of Acrobat that allows you to zoom in, zoom out on files, search through PDFs, really give you a lot of the core functionality that users have certainly demanded in the market. And this is the first release of this. We brought it to the market back in June, and we're working on adding more and more functionality. So this is easy to deploy. Really, it takes 5 minutes. If you've got Azure AD access, it just lights up for all your users.
And what's the licensing model for it?
It's just included with your Acrobat. If you have Acrobat licenses or Doc Cloud licenses or Creative Cloud all apps,
Yep, with services.
with the services turned on, it's just, there's no license, it's just included.
But even if I don't have all my users licensed, they can all use this?
No, they'll still have to sign in to use it they'll have to sign into Adobe with their
Right.
SSO or, enterprise or Adobe ID. Once that happens in the browser, it's authenticated, and then the service will know this user has access to Adobe Acrobat.
To build on top of what James said, when you have this light up for your users, we will let you view PDFs regardless of your status. So you can be an unlicensed user, as it were. As soon as you want to make changes to the document, whether it's creating new PDFs, exporting, running organize or combine, that's when we ask you to authenticate and we check what entitlements you have in place.
Okay. So if you're using the same single sign-on provider for 365 and Adobe, it should ask you to do without any option.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question is, how do we authenticate users here? And as James mentioned earlier, if you have the sort of internally what we call type 3, these federated IDs in place, we actually will ask you once to authenticate, to sort of link up your accounts. And then you can remember that as a part of your session. We are working on reducing that friction from a single authentication prompt to what we will offer in the future, where it truly is zero friction. It just knows who you are automatically.
And that goes to your question earlier, where he's now answering for me. With more, he's a product manager, so he can say with authority, and I can't say with authority.
You just help with deployment.
I'm just a pretty sure.
Alex, any questions online?
Yeah, so it's just a follow-up. Somebody asked, can you, is it the same experience in a federated lab environment for students as well for the Office 365 integration?
Okay, let's talk about labs.
Okay.
All right, we're going to kind of divert. We had spent some time talking about that in the morning, or a little bit earlier. Those of you in EDU and education who are using labs today are deploying with serial numbers. And the serial numbers we know is problematic because it's difficult to manage, and then often with the named user you get out of sync with the faculty who like to have, they just go and install on their own, and now you know, things are out of sync. We're moving towards a model that should be available at the beginning of next calendar year, but don't hold me to that because I'm not a product manager. Everybody clear? Okay. That will allow you to deploy a license for software to a lab machine, but it will need to be activated by someone logging in, which is very different, right? Today, you deploy the license to the machine, you double click, it starts Photoshop, and they just use it. What will happen with the new lab solution is the user will double click and it will start and say, hey, sign in with your school credentials. And they sign in with SSO, they sign in with, you know, whatever ID they do to get into Creative, and then it will let them use the software on that machine, okay? And that's it. And they sign out, it's done. But that means, oh, go ahead.
Is this every time they log in or one time only?
Question is it every time or one time only? In a lab, it will be every time they sit down to use that machine, they're going to have to log in because the expectation is it's a lab. You don't want a person to leave their stuff on the machine when they leave. So they'll need to sign out, or you'll have a nice solution that will, you know, deep freeze it, wipe it out, and then start it up again.
They need to have a license as a federated user.
Best question of the day. Do they need to have a license in order to use that lab machine? The answer is no. They just have to have a user.
So we need to federate, so we only federate our employees.
Mm-hmm.
We need to federate our students. Now we have to federate that AD, but not assign a license.
Correct. They don't need a license. They need to be in the admin console and be able to sign in. Yes.
So let me just make sure, I'm going to try to put it in my
Yeah, go right ahead.
architecture, whatever. So when I'm in a lab and student, I go to the lab, I log in Lori at, school.edu, and I can use the Creative Suite, I can use Creative Cloud entitlements, I can use the Acrobat entitlements.
Yep.
I leave the lab, I go back to my dorm or
Yep.
my apartment, and I go to try to do the same thing. It won't work for me unless the school entitled me, Lori, to have my own personal license,
That's
right?
correct.
I just want to make sure that
Yep, that's exactly
really
right.
clear to everybody.
Or if I buy my own, which is always an option. So if I'm a student, I might buy my own license for Creative Cloud, and then I'll have it, and that would be fine. But in the lab, I'm not required to have a Creative Cloud All Apps subscription in order to use the lab machine.
Right,
That's the
because the
change.
school licensed the
The
lab.
school has bought the license,
The
the lab
school
license.
licensed the lab, not the
Yeah.
student. Gotcha.
Now,
Okay.
there's a product that all of our education customers have access to that's called Spark for Education, and it is a free product. We've made it available to all now this is talking from me as the manager of our onboarding team that does this work, we found that the easiest way to ensure that you have students and get them access to creative tools and services in those labs in the future is to assign everybody a Spark license, which is free. So there's no cost to that. It's already in your admin console. Give everybody access to that. Then you know that they are in the admin console, they have an entitlement, everything is working, they can sign into that, they can use Spark anywhere. They can do it on an iPad, they can do it on a Surface, they can do it in the machine at home, doesn't matter. But when they sit down at the lab, they're going to sign in and they can use Premiere, and they can use Photoshop, and they can use Acrobat. Right? That's what they'll be
Great.
using.
All right.
I just kind of want, I guess, a clarification going back to my original question. How, I guess, would it appear for the students when they sign in? So when they go to sign in, would they be taken directly to Adobe's login page, or would they go to the login page and be redirected back to our office? Or
So it's about how would they, what does the sign-in experience look like? So the login model is, let's say they sit down to do Acrobat in a lab. It will say, please sign in. They're going to type in their email address, and at that point, they're going to be directed to Okta.
Gotcha.
Right? So they can also, this is common for EDU, but also for some of our corporate customers, they'll just type at, smith.edu. And that will redirect you immediately to Okta. So it won't even think about the email address. It just knows that this is the domain that's under management. I'm going to go straight over there. So it's the same thing.
So I'm going to get to the question that did get answered, though, was how about the Office 365
Yeah.
integrations in the lab environment? And Jonathan, I don't know. I think we need to probably sit tight and wait for this new solution. Because if you're under serial number, I just want to clarify with everybody, if you're using serial number, you don't have access to the services. So you can't get to the plugin, you can't get to the cloud, you can't do those things while you're still on serial number.
Well, the expectation is there'll be an Acrobat Pro license on the machine, but we'll have to find out whether that also extends to these online services while they're in the lab machine. So that's a good takeaway.
Yeah, we'll take that as we'll get back to you. But it's a great feedback and something we really needed to know about.
There you go.
So what I'd like to do now is move on to talking a little bit about the roadmap in the future. So here's my Adobe disclaimer. Everything we're going to talk about for the next few minutes is in the labs. Can't tell you exactly when it's going to ship. Can't tell you if it ever really will ship. Well, I think it will. But let's leave it at that. I'm just putting that sort of disclaimer out there. And there's two things I wanted to talk about. Actually, I'll talk about one, and James, you'll talk about the other one. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is protection. How many of you today are using MIP or AIP at the document level, the Microsoft? Okay, great.
We got one.
So you've got the umbrella of MIP, right, which allows you to protect the desktops and everything, and then AIP, Azure Information Protection, protects Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and of course the extension to that would be PDF. So what we're doing is we're partnering closely with Microsoft. You'll see some information coming. If anybody here is really interested in that and would like to get into a pre-release with us, raise your hand, let us know today, either online or in person, and we will definitely get that information to you. Additionally, we're going to be putting up a sort of a bookmark this URL for everything IT, and that will include instructions as well. So I just want to make sure that as you can imagine, with this tight relationship we have with Microsoft Adobe, the PDF is just the natural next type of inclusion. And you can envision that you could do it through the Microsoft tool or through Acrobat itself. And that will be like sort of the future where we're going. Not available right now, but on the roadmap. Does anybody have any questions about that, online or in person?
When can we test it?
Great. Question?
When can we test it is the question.
Shortly. That's about as best I can say today without, still having a job. We have a term that I've used at work called CLM, a career limiting move.
Yeah, we
So
don't want
that's
to.
where
We don't
I'm
want to
gonna
make
be
any of those
today.
today.
Okay.
I have a follow-up to that.
Sure, go ahead.
Will it ever be extended to other Adobe products?
So the question is, will AIP ever be extended to other Adobe products? And I personally don't have the answer to that. I'm looking around at my staff and nobody else is saying anything. So Let me take that, is there a product or products you'd like to include? Can I turn it around on you and you could tell me a list of what you would love to see in the mix?
Illustrator #1, Photoshop #2, Premiere #3 in our order of preference.
Okay, so you'd love to see the Creative Cloud products, Illustrator, Photoshop, and Premiere.
So Illustrator magically is a PDF, so you'd be in pretty good, you already be able to do that right now, or not right now,
Well, not
but
Illustrator
when
native. I would-
Illustrator native files are PDF,
But they have a different
usually.
extension. That's
They
what
have
I'm
the
just
different
saying. So
extension,
they're-
yeah.
we could work it out, but I
So there's a
appreciate
model there that works.
feedback. Alex, anything,
Yeah.
I don't, sorry,
Same question.
Same question?
other file formats?
What other product spaces will this?
Okay,
Okay,
Yeah,
Wi-
20% of our products that aren't Office products are Adobe platforms, so
right.
Okay.
you could get us to 100% if you could deliver this quickly.
So that was a great feedback. The 20% of the products are Adobe technology, Adobe product lines, and
Yep.
if we could extend that, then you'd have 100% coverage of your content.
Okay.
Love that. Take
That's
that
great.
back
Thank
for
you.
advisement. Okay, so that
Other
was
questions
the-
around,
anything else
asset
around
protection?
protection in the room, online? All right,
All right.
Jeff, I'm going to let you talk about the next topic.
So I've talked with a couple of people earlier about implementing this federated ID, right? How do we get that to work at scale in an organization? We think about our larger customers could be anywhere from 1,000 to 300,000, 500,000 users that they need to get into the admin console, the Adobe admin console, not the Microsoft admin console. And the model today involves using what we call our user management API to build some type of integration between your directory system and our directory system. We did the hard work for you. My team built a tool called User Sync Tool, and I have some User Sync customers in the room. Whoop, whoop. That thing is the bomb. It will talk to LDAP. You build a binding that says, when I see this condition, this user group over here, or this property that I want to look for, give me all the users with that condition, and I want to give them Acrobat. And I'm going to assign them to Acrobat in the Adobe Admin Console. It also does user creation. So the order of operations would be build a user on the Adobe side from your Active Directory user, and then next give them some products. And it works with Acrobat. It works with Adobe Sign. It works with Creative Cloud. It works with our Experience Cloud. So if you're using Experience Cloud, we've heard a lot about Experience Cloud in the last couple of days here, right? And as you start to move more and more of your activities onto the Adobe Admin Console there, you can also manage users and their product entitlements using this sync tool, which is great. Your effort then turns 100% over to Active Directory group management. Everybody like that? Much better than dealing with the Adobe Admin Console. In our world, I have a consulting team, and if we do our job, you will rarely, if ever, visit the Adobe Admin Console. That will be like an emergency activity. I got clapping going on right now. That's good. Now, to make it happen across the top, I'm moving over here, so I'm gonna glide. My team's a consulting team, so we have built a process that makes sure that you get to some meetings, then you have some things to do like claim your domain and set up your single sign-on, and then we'll have a parallel track related to a virtual machine you have to stand up to run this user sync tool thing so that it can then start to talk and make sure that's all working. We finally get the users syncing and entitlements working, and then we have to go into the end user testing. You'll take your small group and make sure they can all sign in and do the things that they need to do. Then we'll do the large rollout and we're done.
Typical engagement.
I was just about to say, for a big organization, this can take up to 6 months. We have some organizations it takes over a year. Usually that's related, I'm going to be very transparent, it's not related to our technology, it's related to IT processes. You have security review you have to do, and you have to test all this stuff. And so I'm not saying don't do that, you have to do that. That's awesome that you do, because I appreciate the work that you do on my behalf, right? But it means it can take some time. Some of our customers, particularly in EDU, will find the documentation for this, and they'll just do it. And it might be in a couple of days, and they've got it done. But for most of our customers, that is a super outlier to do it that fast. Typically, it's anywhere from, really, the fastest we see is about a month, and then it can go, as long as a year if things don't. We have a lot of review and so on.
Things by committee slows
Committee
down.
slows things way down.
Yeah.
We'll have customers that will show up with about 25 people. Everybody needs to, say, yes, this is good to go. So there's a lot of repeating that we do, and we're used to that, and we're happy to support that type of a model. But that's tedious, right? And the yellow behind me, that standing up of the virtual machine means that you also have some costs that you have to associate, right? Because you have to maintain this virtual machine. We want to make that easier for our customers who are using Azure Active Directory. And so in our new model, we don't have a magic calendar hat that we can put on, but
Maybe before the holiday season.
maybe it's a holiday gift for you. What we're going to do is we're going to take domain claim all the way down to user sync setup, which is the hardest and longest part, and compact it into one step, which will be in our admin console that will allow you to, you want to use Azure Active Directory? Click login, please. Here's all the domains that we found that you manage. Would you like us to sync with those? Yes. Here's all the groups we found. Would you like to hook those up? Yes. This is getting great. And in 30 seconds, that syncing starts, and it's going to start pulling those users. You're a huge organization. It's going to take some time, right, to get the users, the actual syncing done. But the configuration piece, now that stood up, and that just runs on a schedule. It does its own thing. Don't have to touch it. And you can then say, great. This group, I want to have Acrobat Pro. This group, I want to have Acrobat Standard. This group, I want to have Creative Cloud All Apps. And then this group, I want to have Photoshop, right? And you can go and do that after the fact. So we've taken these 3 steps, which have potential capital cost, and eliminated them and compacted them to one. Does that sound like a good thing for you? Thumbs up, nods. I see nods. I see people like going Yahoo.
I think it's going to it's going to simplify.
Yep.
Again, like you said, this by committee, a lot of that'll go away.
Absolutely.
Or security reviews, we're just going to basically have to do probably one across the map here, right? It's not like, because if you've already done
typically one, because now we don't have to do the user sync tool doesn't exist for you in this model because it's all being done in our cloud service. So the security review is quick and painless. You already went through that when they went through the purchasing process, ideally. So that should have, I know he's smiling like, yeah, as if that ever happens, but ideally that happened when purchasing took place, and then that means that you're already cleared. And we have a raft of certifications that we bring to the table, and we'll give you all the documentation you need to get past that. But it's great to see the service-to-service integration. This is going to be just make it so much easier for customers to start managing at scale. And we're really, really happy to have Microsoft as a partner in this, because we couldn't have done it without Microsoft. And they've been great in helping us to make sure that we're doing it the right way. If you have an interest in testing this out, let me know.
Well, I have a link to a form, right, and I'll show you in a minute, and you guys can sign up today and just say, I want to be on the front end of this, the early release program before the holidays.
Before the holidays, yeah.
To get in and get testing it, because honestly, the more of our customers that test it in the early release, the better chance we have of ensuring that any gotchas are addressed and dealt with up front. Alex, any questions online, and then I'll ask you guys.
We had one question, or was that, were you saying I want to sign up? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he wants to sign up.
He wants to be on it.
People expressed interest in it, and they said it sounds a lot easier than the user sync tool. So that's good feedback.
Yep.
And then there was one question from May who said, is this possible with every single app, even when you don't have all apps as single apps in the console?
Yeah, if you have entitlements for single apps, that's a great question. We have a large number of customers, commercial customers, who will have users who only need Photoshop, or they only need our digital video suite, or and when you look at, think about the user base for Adobe products. Maybe it's a bank. You have 100,000 people who need Acrobat, right? Everybody needs Acrobat, but only a few people will need Photoshop or the creative tools. And then now I switch it to an agency. 100,000 people need Creative Cloud, and they get Acrobat with it, right? So it's very common to see single apps in contracts that get deployed to specific small groups. The more and more, though, we're seeing customers adopt the all apps model, because it does include Acrobat, which is a huge benefit. and then that other, whatever the single app is built into it. So when you factor in the Acrobat cost plus the single app, it's about the same price as all apps at that point.
So, but I just want to clarify, with single app, everything you've said today is...
It all applies for deployment, yeah.
Azure AD, UST today, whatever, it just works. It doesn't matter. It's what you have in your admin console reflects what you've had on your contract with Adobe. So you'll see your entitlements, 100 of these, 50 of these, 20 of these, 5,000 of these. Yep. And then you'll just connect them by groups, how you do it. And again, if you're going to connect to the groups that you already have in your LDAP or your, in this case, the AD, it will just do the same.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about the bits and bytes pieces, because there's two aspects to this. There's the license itself, and then there's the software that you're going to be deploying so that folks can use it. How many of you use SCCM today to get software to desktops? I see every hand up.
It's 100% in the room.
100% in the room, but that works for your Windows machines, right? Now, a very small percentage of the folks in this room, because we are at a Microsoft conference, might have Macs, right? A few Macs up there. You guys use Jamf for that? Yeah, hands up, awesome. And there's some other tools that you could use SCCM. You can also do, not as robust as we see with Casper, or with Jamf. So look at that if you're going along, something you ought to look at. And that model doesn't change in named users. So you're used to building a package that has the serial number embedded and then deploying that to end users or to labs, right? What will change is you will build a package with our online packager. That's the new model. So in the admin console is a packager. Software doesn't have a license at that point, because who has the license? The user. So there's no license, and you'll deploy it the same way. So if you want to put out our next release, whatever it's called, maybe it will happen in a few months, and you want to deploy that to end users, then you'll just build a package and deploy it to your end users, perhaps even replace the earlier versions of the software, and then when they start it up, it will say, sign in, done. So you don't have to worry about deploying licenses going forward, which is awesome, and that applies to Acrobat as well as to the Creative Cloud desktop tools, which is great. The other thing that's neat is that when you assign a license to the end user, they can also use the cloud services without the desktop. So on the Acrobat side, we talked about some of the things you can do with Document Cloud as part of Office 365. There's also some things you can do with Document Cloud in Document Cloud itself in a web browser. And then on the creative side, there are some things that you can do with some of our web-only tools like Adobe Spark. I had mentioned that before. So you get a number of actions or a number of points of access to tools and services that go beyond the desktop, but you still will need to deploy something to the end user on the desktop. We do have customers who do enable self-management for software. They can deploy what's known as the Adobe Creative Cloud desktop tool, and with that they can go ahead and install. You don't need to have admin rights on the machine to use that, which is a nice bonus, but it will need to be deployed that way. So there's a method to packaging so that it will deploy correctly, and then it will have its own authentication to be able to deploy software and manage software.
James, one of the things you were talking about, pushing it to the desktop, using it through the browser. The other thing are the mobile apps. And
mobile apps, oh, sweet.
So once you move to the login world, the named users, volume activation, whatever that, the terminology, in Reader on mobile, you log in, you get a lot more. You're going to be able to edit PDFs and organize PDFs once you're logged in. So again, that's not available when the person's on serial number.
Right.
So it's another enticement to get people moved over to login and what we call named user, because then they get those entitlements on any device that they're on, in addition to, of course, their desktop, which is historical.
And if you are walking around the show and you're picking up business cards, I strongly encourage you to use Adobe Scan. Take a picture of the business card, and it will recognize that it's a business card and offer to add it to your contacts. Yeah. It's pretty awesome. Cool.
Stop by the booth and we'll show
yeah,
you
we'll
how
show you that. Oh, there's a question. Alex has a question.
But I want to just mention one other thing. I know a lot of you folks are Creative Cloud users. I'm sure there's a lot of Creative Cloud folks online. Adobe Max is coming up in a couple weeks. And we have sent letters to every one of our enterprise customers today telling them so I'm not saying anything that's not out there. We're gonna, as always at MAX, we always announce some really cool new stuff that's coming. That's part of the MAX conference. If you and your end users are still leveraging serial numbers, those new functionality will not be available to them. As Adobe moves forward with the new licensing platform and the new licensing technology, we just are unable to bring that new functionality into the serial number builds. I want to be really frank with you guys. So that's another thing that, as an IT admin, to keep in the back of your head. You may start getting some end users after they watch the MAX keynote or attend Adobe MAX in LA. I got to have this now.
Right.
You got to realize that we may need to move that set of users into the named environment maybe sooner than the long-term plan you have. So I just wanted to put that in the back of everybody's head to make sure you all were aware of that as well. And James, I don't know if you wanted to pile on to that or add anything, but I think
it's a really important distinction, and you just need to be aware that when people are going to start asking for our yet unnamed new products that will very likely be announced at our conference, but can't guarantee that, right? That they will not activate with serial numbers, period. So we know that that presents a problem for education who are using serial numbers in labs, and that's why we've been very transparent about that when we've been talking with our customers, that there will be a moment in time where your faculty might they'll just go and update because they do, but the labs will be stuck on the 2018 versions, at least through the time when you decide to move forward with that, which will be in the beginning of the next calendar year. So Alex has got some questions, right?
Alex walks up. Any questions in the room? Okay, go ahead.
I think some of our online listeners just want a further clarification. So can you do the user sync tool and theoretically the Azure at the same time concurrently, or how's the transition process from one to another?
Yeah, you could do both because they both leverage our user management API. They just do it in different ways. We would not recommend that. I'm just making that very clear. We would not recommend in the same Adobe Admin Console, pointing at the same directory there, we would not recommend two different models because that's just going to lead to timing and confusion and so on. So that we don't recommend that. In terms of the transition, so I might be a user sync tool customer right now, and we encourage you to continue with that if you're doing that, or if you're just about to start, do that, because remember, it may be an early Christmas gift, but it may be an Easter surprise. We don't know when that's going to happen. So continue with user sync tool, we'll get that done. Making the transition to Azure Active Directory will be a quick process, and then you just shut off the sync tool.
Right.
Just turn off in PowerShell you said, hey, make this thing run every hour or day, whatever. Okay, then you just turn that off. But the cool thing is it's configured. So let's say something goes wrong, which it won't, but if it does, with the Active Directory built-in sync, then you can just go back to sync tool and say, turn on, and it will just start running.
So I think what we'll see is that probably folks that aren't using UST yet, maybe people that have been holding back, waiting, will start with Azure AD, and or people that have UST would then do a migration probably a little further down the line, and your team's going to be always.
Yeah, we're going to support both models. Our goal is for you to be successful. So if we encounter you and we're working and you say, hey, we've got Azure AD, we're going to say, fantastic, let's just go into this panel and hit the switch and let's make it roll.
The other thing I wanted to mention is you lead the North America team, but we have consultants similar to you guys globally.
Yes,
so
that's right.
Anybody that is joining us remotely, not here in the U.S. or not here in Orlando at the moment, there is the same consulting deployment org globally that we have to help with every one of our enterprises.
Yeah, so we've got teams based in London and Paris and somewhere in Germany. I should know what city, but somewhere in Germany. And then we also have a team in Sydney, Australia, and a team in Tokyo, Japan. So we're global. We cover all the time zones, and we're here to help. Work with your customer success manager, though. That's the entry point to get to us, is with your customer success manager. If you don't know who that is, then let us know, and we'll let you know. We actually did that earlier before the show. We were working with somebody on that. Other questions from Alex? He's saying good?
So I know we're getting a little bit
we're in good shape, yeah.
So I wanted to, again, I kept telling you, I'll give you URLs, this is the URL, if you remember nothing else from today, folks online, folks in the room. Whoops. Sorry.
Adobe.ly.
Adobe.ly/IT Roundtable. That's this series that we're doing. We've done for the last 6 months. Some of you want to go back and watch and fix. The one last month, folks, was all about education.
That one was a great
So
one for
it may be
EDU.
something you want to watch. But additionally, at that URL, we have the, hey, I want to sign up for early access to Azure. As soon as we can have it available, it would be, hey, I want to sign up for AIP. It also has links to join this IT community that we've built, where you can talk amongst yourselves with your peers. Also, we do have a quarterly newsletter that is Creative Cloud Enterprise and Document Cloud Enterprise that goes out. It gives you a chance to sign up for that and as well. So this is, honestly, that's the bookmark. We also have an IT learning hub. It's in there. This link has a little bit of everything that we do for our IT admins to help you, you know, make sure that you kind of got one-stop shopping versus where the heck's Adobe storing everything this week.
So I want to ask a question that relates to this.
Okay.
We're all IT pros here, right? And we've all come to Ignite. Would you come to an Adobe event devoted to IT specifically? I'm curious, would that be something to see, and then online, you know, say yes, 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 if that's something of interest? We're gauging interest because as we grow more into working with our IT pros, something that we've been doing for the last couple of years and getting closer and closer, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to think about taking the roundtable model that we've got going so strong now and maybe turn that into something a little bit more dedicated over the course of a day and let you guys have closer access to some upcoming technologies and so on that we'd be working on. So
So
all right.
you know, we've been asking questions as we go, but again, I wanted to see if there was any other unanswered questions. We didn't really talk about Adobe Sign or Adobe Stock today. We just didn't bring it into the mix, and there's a couple little points I wanted to bring up during the Q&A unless anybody had any questions. So let me see first if anybody has any. Yes, sir.
I know I came in a little bit later, but
That's all right.
for shared PCs that are not students, say if
Mhm.
you have multiple faculty sharing one machine, how would the licensing work on a machine like that?
So there's a couple ways to approach that. If you read your end user license agreement, it currently does not allow you to share an ID. So the faculty would just sign out and sign in. If it's a serial numbered machine, then we don't know anything about that, and you would continue to do whatever you do. If that's sitting in a kiosk and they're walking up to it and they're using it, or if it's in an office and you've got two faculty sharing an office and they're sharing the machine, they're just going to do that. We don't know anything about that. But in the named user, what you'd want to do, if you wanted to follow the terms of your end user license agreement, would be to assign the software to each of those faculty independently. Then they could step into that machine, sign out Jane Smith, and sign in Ming Chang. They could do that. And then it just becomes them for Creative Cloud. Same thing they do with Microsoft, right? Office 365, same thing.
I'm on the same shared machine, and
Yeah.
I'm using my Microsoft suite. I log in as Lori, I have my assets, it's all about me, but it's the same computer that I shared with a coworker.
And I do want to talk a little, there's an interesting nuance though that comes up with that. In the current model, the way that we designed our licensing wasn't really built for multi-users on the same machine. Okay, so you'd have to sign out of Creative Cloud and then sign out of the machine, then sign in, and then sign in, right? Blah, blah, blah. We're going to be changing that in the near future and moving, this is now like technically where we store things, we want to move all of the Adobe related bits and bytes into the user profile. So that way, if I stay signed in on a machine, or if I'm signed into Creative Cloud and I sign out of the machine, I haven't signed out of Creative Cloud. It's still there and it would still remain active. Even if the next person came in and signed in, now the licensing is going to be attached to their user profile. And that way it will make it a lot easier. I'm not saying we're going to support roaming profiles. That's a whole other animal. But it'll make it easier on a shared machine. They can sign out. The next person can sign in, and they should still be logged into the Creative Cloud at that point. Does that make sense? So that would make it a lot easier, I think, in those shared situations, because I'd just sign in once rather than twice. If it is a situation where you have a shared machine that they're not signing into or signing out of, I know that happens in some cases where you have a completely shared machine and it just stays on. I don't quite get it, but it does happen. Then they would have to sign out and sign in because the user profile wouldn't be changing at that point. Make sense?
Other questions in the room? Alex, questions online?
Yeah, there's a question about federated ID deployment with Captivate. There's a question
Cool.
like, when is that going to be rolled into the CC desktop apps?
That is, I was going to say something and then you cut me right off. Oh, it makes me so sad.
I ruined it. I'm walking away.
So this is a commentary on Adobe's organization. We have and it's not negative, it just is what it is. We have our Creative and Document Cloud, so Acrobat, right, and then the rest of Creative Cloud that work very closely together in but even so, Acrobat, we talked about deploying the bits and bytes. You can build an Acrobat package separately with the customization wizard that will have all kinds of additional capabilities disabled or configured that you can't do with the Creative Cloud packager that's online. So for banks that need to do significant Acrobat customization, they're going to continue to use that customization wizard. That doesn't change, right? For Captivate and Presenter and RoboHelp and FrameMaker and Technical Communication Suite that incorporates those, that is a different organization within the company. They are moving to named users, so Captivate and Presenter can be assigned today as products in the Adobe Admin Console. However, you still need to package and deploy the software like you do today, so you're going to continue to use Casper, going to continue to use SCCM separately to get the actual software to the end user, but the license will be managed in the Admin Console. Sometime in 2019,
Early, we said
early,
in the letter.
okay, good, so I'm glad you have a date. So she's pinned it down. February 2019 or before, we will have named user licensing for the rest of the Technical Communication Suite, okay? Now they will not be available in the Creative Cloud desktop app because they're not Creative Cloud products. And I just want to make that very clear.
In the admin console,
Yes.
so then you'll have all your, if you want to, I'm going to use the old desktop Adobe
Yeah.
apps available to you for management, entitlement.
For license
and
assignment,
deployment
yeah.
In our admin console.
Right. But bits and bytes are still going to need to get pushed down to the end users using SCCM, using Casper, using
Different packaging
or
tools.
different packaging tools
So
that
we
you use.
basically have the creative packaging tool, we still have Acrobat's customization
Mhm.
packaging tool, and the products, the Captivates and the presenters of the world have their own packaging environment as well.
It's very true.
You know, we're a big company.
We're getting there.
Doing the best we can, but we will still have that.
Any other questions
Stock
from?
and stock.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that.
Stock and Sign. So we didn't really talk about Adobe Sign too much today, and I just wanted to bring up a couple of things. You can manage all your users for Adobe Sign directly in Admin Console today. Not a big deal. Also, clearly Sign is a SaaS product, so the only way it works is with login users. You know, it doesn't work with serial number.
Right.
But again, it makes it very easy to work with. Stock is another interesting animal. So we have a lot of customers, I'm not sure if any of you here in the room or the folks online, in your renewal of your enterprise contract with Adobe recently have added stock entitlements into it. Great. But the only way that stock works with the rest of the products is you have to be enabled services. You can't be on the serial numbers. So
Right.
that's another thing to think about. Your organization has spent money with either Adobe Sign or Adobe Stock, but if your users are still on serial number, they're literally not getting access to those two environments. So I just want to make sure that, again, that's one of those IT things that's in the back of your head.
Oh, and Stock is another thing that has an add-on for PowerPoint.
Right.
So that's something that you might consider adding right through as an admin through the store and deploying that to all of your end users, which
If
is,
they have access to stock,
yeah.
the stock.
Then the Stock plugin works. Yeah, so they sign in the plugin, and then it works great.
So James, I know we've only got a couple minutes left.
Yep.
I just wanted to bring up
IT
again,
Roundtable.
the the URL, the things that we might want to do, and say thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming and joining us live here in person. Everybody that's online today, thanks a lot. And you'll see, oops, just jumped ahead on me. You'll see that this series will continue throughout the year. We try to do this once a month with guest speakers. If any of you that are attending here today live or online want to be a speaker and join us, we'd love
Let us know.
Come to you.
We'll come to you.
And you can be part of the roundtable talking about your environment and what you've done. We can share because it's a very much peer-to-peer sharing that we want this to be.
Anybody going to Adobe Max?
Anybody going to
Maybe next year.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you everyone for attending, and we'll see you in the future.
Thanks so much.
All right.